Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour. A lot of news happening right after Ben Shapiro. All this just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air right here on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. What a week. Stocks closing higher today, hitting record highs. All three of the major averages finished the week at all-time highs following President Trump's victory in the presidential election this week. And the Fed put the icing on the cake by cutting short-term rates by a quarter percentage point. The S&P 500 moved up 22 points to end at 5,995.5 after popping above 6,000 during the trading session. The Dow moved up 260 points, settling at 43,988. It had popped above 44,000 during the trading session. And the NASDAQ moving higher by 17 points to end at 19,287, good enough for an all-time high for the week. Get a load of this. The Dow was up 4.6%. The S&P 500 was up 4.7%. And the NASDAQ, the star of the week again, up 5.7%. Both the Dow and S&P 500 each logged their biggest weekly percentage gain since last November. The S&P 500 traded above 6,000 for the first time in history, while the Dow was soaring above 44,000 during the trading day today, following President Trump's election and the Federal Reserve's interest rate cut, all lifting the large-cap benchmark indexes to record highs. NVIDIA stock did not have its best first day as a member of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It started as a Dow member today. It's a fourth biggest drag on the index today, but at least the shares of Sherwin-Williams, which is the paint company, which was also added to the Dow Jones Industrial Average today, replacing Dow Chemical, more than made up for it. We see NVIDIA stock closed down $1.25 at $147.63. Shares of Sherwin-Williams gained nearly $3, up $2.67 at $386.67 a share. Palantir and Tesla shares saw big moves this week after Palantir's upbeat earnings report and also optimism about Tesla's potential to benefit from President Trump's second term. Two of those stocks moved up impressively. Palantir was up about 39%. Tesla shares about 30% higher on the week, ranking second and third in the S&P 500. Taser maker Axon Enterprises stock moved up 42%. This one suddenly zapping on the scene here. Axon Enterprise, with most of those weekly gains related to the company's better-than-expected earnings report, which showed traction in artificial intelligence, according to MarketWatch. Of course, the other big news this week, Bitcoin knocking out of the park this week on President Trump's election. Record highs for Bitcoin and other crypto-related stocks moved up as investors bet former President Trump's victory in the presidential election will be a big deal for cryptocurrencies, and we're already seeing that. Right now, Bitcoin is hovering above 76,000 at 76,552. Ethereum making a big move in the last day or so, just below 3,000 now, and Doge is at 20 cents. The price of oil moving lower today as China's latest round of stimulus measures failed to lift expectations for energy demand, and some traders expect to see President Trump's promotion of U.S. oil production. We did see prices, though, still higher for the week in the energy patch and oil patch, with some traders betting on stronger economic growth under President Trump's leadership. Inflation-weary Americans, meanwhile, looking for vacation bargains, turning to cruises these days, which have a lot of new big ships to choose from, including many right here based out of the ports of L.A. and Long Beach. We'll talk about that this afternoon with the cruise guy himself, Stuart CHIRON, president of CruiseGuy.com, will be joining us live here in the studio. Some universities got attention this week for closing their campuses because of this week's election results, because some students were upset that President Trump won. I'll talk about that with PR guru Michael Levine coming up live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed, President Trump, and the whole works. Joining us live now to cap this epic week, top-ranked money manager Ken WINANS, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at WINANS Investments, which you can find at WINANSinvestments.com. Ken WINANS, also a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1 and 2, soon to be Investment Atlas 3, also a Forbes magazine contributor. His new article just came out. Ken WINANS also has his crypto credentials And most importantly, he's now host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday nights right here on your favorite station, 790 KBC, Monday nights at 6 p.m. Good afternoon to you, Ken Winans.
Hello, Frank. And boy, has the world had changed quite a bit since you and I talked on Monday night. And it's been fun because in my line of work, our job is to just absorb information and to try to get the facts versus opinions. But there's a couple of things that really stood out to me today. As you know, I watch commodities very closely, and you are 100% correct on what you said about cryptos. I mean, you're looking at, for the month, just this month, Bitcoin is up 15%, Ethereum is up 17%, and then on the stock side, Coinbase is up a whopping 45%, which is an exchange for crypto. So you have that going on. The other big piece of news is all the pundits are talking about how inflationary all these new policies are going to be. Well, I like to look at the raw facts. The number one thing is the U.S. dollar, which I track by the dollar index. It is actually up 1% since the election, 4% on the year. There's no sense of the dollar falling apart. Also on the commodity front itself, the physical commodities, there's been, as we know, there's been a lot of pressure on commodity prices, food prices. And the one thing that's been very nice to see is that since the election, a lot of food commodities have actually backed off. I'm talking about the futures themselves, not the end products, but the futures themselves are coming down. So that tells me, again, although there is some seasonality attached to this, that a lot of these projections of high inflation and all these other things are simply not showing up. Frank, the other thing that I think it's worth bringing up, and I'm not a big fan of it, but I think many, many people in the audience have advisors that promote this still, is the global asset allocation model. Well, I have news for anybody who's probably not going to be real happy. If you have been told to maintain large positions in these foreign ETFs, they have had a miserable time of it since the election. So again, I think people are going to have to think about pivoting their portfolios for this new administration and realize that you just can't sit back and hope. You need to make concerted moves.
On there live with money manager Ken Winans, host of Winning with Winans here in 790 KABC, also CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments. And Ken Winans, let me ask you about this. Given this epic move, record-shattering move in the cryptos here with Bitcoin at an all-time high right now above 76,000, we've seen some pretty wild predictions on where it goes from here, given the president has stated he's going to be the crypto president and all of that. A lot of bullish enthusiasm now for cryptos here. Where do you think Bitcoin goes from here?
Well, let me answer it this way. There is one of the big blocks on certainly crypto in general has been just the confusion over regulatory oversight. Who's actually going to be doing this? Well, you now have an administration in office that thinks crypto is an important part of the U.S. economy, and I think that those regulatory hurdles are going to be cleared, which means we will probably see more exchange-traded funds and commodity futures on the CTFC side going out in the future. Certainly with what happened with Coinbase, is a stock that I've talked about many times on this show, and I mean it's amazing how well it's done. But you're just going to find that you've cleared some very important hurdles. Now, in my latest article in Forbes, which is titled Municipal Titanic, I was focused on what was going on with California's finances. But Frank, as you know, I specifically said, although California can't issue a currency, I don't see why states in general can't have crypto, whether it is just a crypto that just trades in the name of the state, or it's a stable coin backed on the natural resources of the state properties. So I think that you're going to find a lot of innovative ways that crypto can actually help our economy as we move forward. But I will also say we have to be very, very cautious. Things can be very volatile in the crypto world, and this new president likes to zig and zag a lot. We might find the volatility might still be very high, so I wouldn't necessarily chase, but I'm not afraid to buy it on a pullback.
All right. Well, it certainly looks like the Trump trade was on this week, although shares of DJT, which was seen as a proxy for President Trump's chances of retaking the White House, which had that huge run-up ahead of the election, has been bouncing around, closing higher today by a little over $4 at 31 and change. What about that one and some of the other so-called Trump trade stocks. Gold, by the way, pulling back this week, and looks like it's on sale once again below 2,700. Silver pulling back to 31 and change, and platinum is below 1,000 here now at 978. What are your thoughts about all of these things that have been associated with the election?
Well, any of the Trump stocks themselves, there's an old saying on Wall Street, basically buy on rumors, sell on news. So I think, again, this is a stock that is we consider a small cap stock, and it has a lot of volatility attached to it, and the volume levels can swing quite a bit. In the case of gold and silver, I think that's again another referendum that the fears of global commodity heating up under this new administration. Again, I'm looking, gold is down 4% since the election. So again, all these things that you often hear about from other sources about the inflationary pressures, again, it's just not showing up when you look at the facts themselves. So I think you have to kind of think about that. But Frank, the other big thing that I think is just so important to grasp, so many people are saying this market is long in the tooth, this bull market's coming to an end. Well, I have not thought that throughout this entire fall. As you know, in my Forbes articles, I actually put that I thought that the S&P could hit 6,300. It might turn out that I'm a little too conservative on that. But the reason I say that is not that I'm a permabull. I am looking at the underlying strength and the broadening of this rally. You're now finding a lot of power in the service sector, the industrial stocks, the energy stocks are coming back to life, the real estate stocks, they're all beginning to move. And I think that, again, you're finding money is shifting, not necessarily dumping their tech stocks, but they're reallocating their positions into these other areas. And I think that will continue. And as long as we have that, this rally could easily power right through the holidays and go into January. So again, I think anybody, and again, this has nothing to do with your political views. This is economics. That, the fall's on your side seasonally, the rally's broadening out. There's really no reason to conservatively have a bunch of money sitting on the sidelines right now. I'll throw one other quick thing out there too. Bonds. There has definitely been a pullback in income investments throughout a decent part of the election rally. I'm looking whether it's corporate bonds, preferred stocks, or two of the areas I'm in. Now, it doesn't mean you rush out and dump them, but there's very clearly money that is allocating back toward equities, and I think you might even find some money reallocating itself back into real estate REITs, especially for commercial and industrial properties. There's just a shift, and you want to pivot into these shifts.
You know who had a good week? Elon Musk. He's worth now, according to your favorite magazine, Forbes magazine, $304 billion. He cleared $300 billion earlier this morning and is up about $4 billion since I last looked. It looks like up $13.7 billion. Is that today? Wow. $304 billion is where he's at right now. Of course, Elon Musk now famously runs X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Tesla, SpaceX, and the AI startup XAI. Tesla had a big week, up more than $24 today, above $321 and change here. Of course, SpaceX has seen a spectacular success, and he was out campaigning for President Trump. What are your thoughts here about, I know you like to talk about winners here on Winning with WINANS that we'll be doing on Monday at 6 p.m., but Elon Musk, a big winner this week here at Ken WINANS.
Frank, it's interesting that what a lot of people, the pundits, were saying about President Trump was that he's down. Well, and he does like to make jokes about electric vehicles. We've all heard them. But he's repeatedly said over and over, he's not against electric vehicles, but he believes in choice. And I think, again, it's counterintuitive. A lot of people are saying, oh, my goodness, Tesla's going to get creamed because this guy's anti-EV. Again, we're finding right away that Mr. Musk has a voice in this administration, whether it's officially or unofficially. And I think that in the case of electric vehicles, there will be the sensible approach to them. Let's put it this way. We all know there's not enough charging stations. There hasn't been for quite a while. Well, if there are going to be enough charging stations for EVs, I think that this new administration would be the ones that would practically apply that in a way that makes sense. I think you're going to have those kind of things that, again, are counterintuitive. In the case of SpaceX, I mean, the fact that President Trump was literally talking about the new rocket and how the new landing, arms capture these things tells me right there that, the man who invented Space Force we're now going to see a new surge in the space side of the economy, which, as we know, and I'm Frank, I know you feel the same way, this drives new invention, this drives new technologies. It's always been one of the areas that America has been very strong in. And for those who are wondering what's going to happen to the space station with all these leaks and problems they're having up there, I think these two men can fix that and hopefully fix some of the other things wrong with our space program.
Maybe he'll be NASA administrator, too, along with the head of the Department of Government Efficiency that they've been talking about, too. But an eye-popping gain in wealth for Elon Musk, and who has also been very critical, of course, about business here in California, has already pulled X, formerly known as Twitter, out of California, and looks like he's in the process of taking SpaceX's headquarters out of here as well. And I see in your latest Forbes article here, Ken Winans, it's titled "A Municipal Titanic." You've taken a close look at California's leaders and finances here. Maybe you can highlight the article that people can pull up on Forbes.com.
And Frank, thank you for bringing it up. And, I'm always questioned when I write these pieces, are you sure you don't need protection when you go home at night? Look, it was not to bash California, but it was to take a realistic assessment of what's going on in that state and to look at it from a business perspective, which is, I think, what Mr. Musk did. And it was very, very clear that when you look at it as from the case in point, how many companies have pulled out, big companies that were, founded in California. When you look at the fact that debt levels, according to the article that I read on Hoover Institute, claimed it's 1.6 trillion in debt, and it's growing, certainly with the two ballot initiatives the state just put through. But it was looking at it at a business standpoint, negative cash flow, bloated infrastructure, meaning the 2.4 million government workers, with government being the biggest industry in California. It was to look at it that way. And I think that's literally what a lot of the business leaders who have left have looked at. Certainly we know about the high taxes. But I did bring up solutions, and not to just bash, but to always try to be constructive. And a couple of things that I brought out very clearly. Number one, you got to change the environment. You got to make business a partner, not an adversary. Number two, adopt some of the government practices of the competing states like Texas and Nevada, where they actually do have part-time legislation. Pay off the debts. Certainly the natural resources that the state has. There are lots of friendly technologies and practices that would allow us to use our natural resources. And then, the dandy, and I think it's pretty funny that we talk about crypto. I actually threw a new idea on the table. I called it the California crypto, and I thought of it maybe as mainly as a stable coin based on the value of California's natural resources. So there's a lot of ways to fix these, but the article is a canary in the coal mine to anybody who has municipal bonds in their portfolio. Look, I know that you're told these things never go out, they never fail, that they're always perfect. That's not true. And when I specifically talked about for California investors, you might want to think about diversifying out your investment in California municipals if you're overly concentrated, and look at corporate bonds and preferred stocks as an alternative. So that's really, as I said before, Frank, it's a time to pivot. It's a time to shift things around within these portfolios and not sit back and turn your head against it.
All right, mercifully, one big company that's still based in California is the magnificent one, NVIDIA, which has seen that big run-up, and today a bit of a pullback, now part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. How significant is NVIDIA's entry into the Dow, along with the Sherwin-Williams, by the way? Those are the two new names on the Dow 30 list. And while we have let me ask you also at the same time here, since we're almost out of time here now, Ken Winans, any specific places where you are putting money now into or taking it off the table?
Well, a couple of quick things. Let's talk about the names real quick. So in the case of NVIDIA and Sherwin-Williams, now Sherwin-Williams has been around for I think 55 years. It's a retailer. I like the fact that they balanced it out with old and new. It made perfect sense. But it is going to make the Dow much more volatile. So anybody who has an index fund tied to it, get ready. I'll tell you that the areas that I still finding that people are very light in are financials and industrials. And I think, again, if you're light in these areas in your portfolio, you're going to miss a big part of this rally, especially in the financials. And I would take a good hard look at JP Morgan, symbol JPM, and I would also still take a look at the insurance companies. The one that I still like a lot is Progressive, PGR. But again, you need to pivot, not necessarily dump all your tech stocks, but rebalance and go into these other hot areas.
Terrific, Ken. Wish we had more time as always. Appreciate you taking the call here to wrap up this epic week. And look forward to speaking with you again on Monday, certainly on Monday evening at 6 p.m. on Winning with Winans right here on 790 KABC. That is top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Ken, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. Out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Stocks closing higher today with all three of the major averages wrapping up the week at an all-time high following the election of President Trump this week and the Fed putting the icing on the cake, as I said earlier, by cutting short-term rates by a quarter percentage point. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 260 points at 43,989 after popping about 44K for the first time. The S&P 500 gained 22 to settle at 5,995 after popping above 6,000 for the first time during the trading day. And the Nasdaq moved 17 points, settling at 19,287 for the week. The Dow was up 4.6%, the S&P 500 up 4.7%, and the Nasdaq popped 5.7% for the week. Gold slipping $13 at $2,684 and change. Silver down 43 cents at $31.42. Cryptos moving sharply higher this week. Bitcoin above 76,000 now, 76,552, hitting record highs this week. Ethereum also got a pop, right now up 19 at 2,960, and Doge at 20 cents. And now the latest news for you here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. President of USC, Carol Folt, has announced she's resigning, stepping down from her position at the end of the academic year. Folt has served as the 12th president of USC. She announced in a statement today that she will retire on July 1st, 2025. She did not provide a reason for her decision. The announcement coming after deep criticism over Folt's handling of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations on the USC campus during the spring semester, including deploying law enforcement to the campus and her decision to cancel the valedictorian's commencement speech, citing safety concerns. Meanwhile, universities got attention this week for closing their campuses. Some universities did because of this week's election results, because some students were upset that President Trump won. Reports that several universities across the nation canceled classes and provided safe spaces for students to recover from the presidential election. Recover, in quotes, prompted a wave of criticism that those schools are not preparing students for the real world. Big discussions on some of the major networks this week. Let's bring in veteran public relations guru Michael Levine. Michael, thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon.
Well, Frank, thank you, and thank you for the privilege of sharing your valuable audience with me.
Well, thank you very much. You're the right guy to turn to on all of this. Certainly the big news this week, it's been one epic story after another. The presidential election, from a PR standpoint, first of all, President Trump prevailed in a big way this week, right?
Well, he sure did, and I would encourage your listeners, along with myself and you, to never, ever, 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 ever again believe any of these nonsensical, fancy-sounding polls. I did exactly what most Americans did all during the season, this election season. I believed the polls. I thought, oh, this is going to be a very, 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 very close race, and I believed it. Hook, line, and sinker. And then when this blowout happened the other night, I resolved that I am never going to believe another poll for as long as I live. They're just utter and complete nonsense. They have proven wrong over and over and over again, so I'm no longer going to believe them. So that is one of the lessons that I have learned.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for taking the call on that, and also the story here about the universities. I know.
It's just you know, Frank. There are times when I hear you read a story, and seldom are there times when I don't know whether to laugh or cry. And this is one of those times, Frank.
Yeah.
I listen to it, and I don't know what the proper reaction is. Should I laugh? It's hilarious. Or should I cry? Because this is where our nation has ended up, or at least the elite university portion of our nation. I don't know. It is so sick. It is so bizarre. And yet there are men and women with PhDs from what historically were reputable universities who believe this stuff. And of course it's a great reason or great explanation for why Donald Trump won, because America doesn't believe this nonsense.
Let me ask you this. Now, I'm sure you've followed the social media feed on all this. And, of course, X appears to be the number one news source now in the world, at least according to the guy who runs it now, Elon Musk. And he trumpeted that this week. I see Georgetown University in the Washington, D.C. area drawing flack on social media after the news broke that the college invited students to a self-care suite on Wednesday, the day after Election Day, to recover from the stress of the 2024 presidential election. And then you probably saw that the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown reportedly offered milk and cookies and hot cocoa, as well as Lego toys and coloring and mindfulness exercises to get their minds off the election results. I don't recall seeing anything like that ever before.
I don't either, and it's really happening. And there are educated people in America, which is why maybe America has such contempt for higher education currently, right? It didn't always have contempt, where most prestigious universities used to have great respect. But today, elite universities and just universities in general have lost their minds. And remember, they have deans and they have professors, and these people believe this nonsense. It's just hard to believe. I don't know what to say.
Wow. PR guru Michael Levine, almost speechless here on this story, on the stories that I've been reading this afternoon. That is really something. And of course, these universities and their handling of situations here in the over the past year related to the protests and all that, and the way Jewish students have been treated on campus has also been outrageous. So,
and by the way, Frank, let's think about that for a moment, if we may. So, what these universities are saying is, Donald Trump was reelected president of the United States, and so therefore we're going to give you a day off with milk and cookies. But after Israel was attacked, were Jewish students given the day off with milk and cookies on October 8th? I don't recall any of that, do you?
That's a very important point.
So, it's a point worth making. It's a sick mindset. These people are they've lost their minds. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party has aligned themselves with too many of these terribly lost souls. And, of course, the consequences to the party are exactly what we witnessed the other night. And they don't seem to be able to do any self-reflection. They just, I don't know.
It's interesting
there
that
must be a psychological explanation for it.
And speaking of explanation, we did not get an explanation on the resignation of the president of USC today, Carol Folt. That's certainly big news, and eager to get.
Obviously, the university. By the way, many universities, donations from alumni are down 30, 40%.
Right.
So obviously, the deep discredit that this woman and others brought to USC is now being responded to. I mean, how these people handled these protests were just an abomination, just pathetic.
It'll be interesting to see under President Trump what he does with these universities and follow up on everything that's happened over the past year. Well, Michael, I wish we had more time, but we'll have to stop there. What a week. We could talk for hours here. That is veteran public relations guru Michael Levine. Live with us here, Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here, folks. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest source of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA, one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the markets and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. It's party time at sea. Inflation-weary Americans looking for vacation bargains and turning to cruises these days in big numbers, with big new ships to choose from here, including out of the ports of L.A. and Long Beach. We did see the earnings news from the major cruise lines come out recently. Carnival, Royal Caribbean, NCL, all knocking it out of the park, or maybe should say full steam ahead. Let's bring in the cruise guy himself now, Stuart CHIRON, the president of CruiseGuide.com, live with us in studio. Stuart, great to see you here.
Frank, it is great to see you on a lovely Friday afternoon.
All right. Well, it's not just a cruise segment. It's the Love Boat here. We love seeing you here, Stuart. So take it from the top and give us an update on what's happening in the cruise business.
Well, it's been probably the best year in the industry's history. The ships are full. People are paying record prices. There's record numbers of passengers. Port Miami, which is the busiest cruise port in the world, just announced that they had 8.2 million cruise passengers sail through there. Port Canaveral was at 7.6 million. Waiting on Port of Los Angeles, which I think last year was about almost 1.4 million. So, hopefully, they're getting closer. I'd say estimate-wise, they're probably around 1.6 for 24. We'll see where they are, but it's bringing record amounts of money to local economies, and it's great to see people taking advantage of the value proposition that cruising offers.
That's amazing. Stuart CHIRON, president of CruiseGuide.com, live with us here in studio, here on 790 KBC, Mottek On Money. And you've been on all the big new ships, right, Stuart? What's the most exciting thing these days?
Well, the new ships, the largest ship in the world, Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas, which will have a sister ship, Star of the Seas, next year. I mean, we're talking 251,000 tons. But, the nice thing is to see out here in Los Angeles to see the number of ships. But you have people that are going all over the world. The Mediterranean experienced another record year. Alaska experienced another record season. And as we're seeing in the earnings calls, the future bookings for cruises are stronger than they've ever been. There's more deposits on record. There are fewer cabins. Now, typically heading into the wave season, which is between January and March of the following calendar year, they're usually at about 25%. Right now, Carnival Corp revealed that they were just about 50% booked for all of 2025 already. So that means that there's fewer cabins to be sold across their 8 brands. So people are going to have to, really think about making those reservations sooner rather than later, because there's a lot less availability for 2025. Royal Caribbean group with Royal Caribbean Celebrity, Silver Sea, for example, and then NCL with NCL, Oceania, and Regent. They're all coming out with record figures. And then we're seeing on the hotel side, Hilton, Marriott are all saying where they're seeing softening. And I think it has a lot to do with people seeing, we're tired of being price gouged in hotels. So the cruise vacations are doing much better than land.
Right. I've heard a lot from folks who are these eye-popping hotel rates nowadays, and inflation has really hit the hotel business as wages have increased at hotels. That's a big factor. And, of course, just across the board, inflation cost impacting hotels. So compared to cruises, looks like people are seeing value there. Right, Stuart? Tell us about that.
Well, they're seeing, during and after the pandemic, the price value was anywhere from 30 to 50%. It's about probably 20 to 25% of a higher value on a cruise versus land. And it's just, the nice thing is you're not packing and packing, checking out hotels, waiting in airports, and waking up in the same boring place each day. Gives you a chance to experience new destinations at a fraction of the cost without the reduced services, like when you go to these hotels, which are still charging, the pandemic pricing, where they were charging 2 to 3 times what they normally would, and providing you less service.
Right, and then those crazy fees attached. And then I don't know if you parked here lately at a hotel, but certainly even the downtown area especially, you're looking at a pretty big parking bill. So what kind of pricing are we looking at these days for cruises out of the ports of L.A. and Long Beach?
Well, we're seeing more ships. Carnival's Panorama is back, and you've got 3, 4, 5-night Royal Caribbean still here with Navigator of the Seas. You still have several of the Princess ships, which of course it's more than a cruise; it's the Love Boat. Got to always love that one. Discovery Princess still being their newest ship here, and their brand new Sun Princess is now sailing out of Port Everglades. She just came in from Europe, and the nice thing is, look, the people, the Mexican Riviera has probably had one of its best seasons yet. Hawaii from the West Coast is doing very well. People are looking into Alaska, but of course you got the Caribbean and you got the Mediterranean.
Hard to believe it was just about 5 years ago that we were there for the christening of the Panorama in Long Beach with Vanna White unveiling the letters of the Carnival Panorama with all the folks there, and you included. Now, you're here in town for a special event involving the artist Weiland, who's famous for those beautiful murals on the NCL ships on the hull there, right? Stuart, tell us about that. Yeah,
he painted the hull of Norwegian Bliss, and the Weiland Foundation is having their event at the Vans headquarters down in Costa Mesa on Sunday, and he's got a big foundation where he's doing a lot to raise money to help save the oceans.
That's amazing, right? So he's an amazing artist, and what can be expected there this weekend?
Well, it should be a nice event. Silent auctions, trying to raise money for the different events. Save water programs, and do a lot of stuff for kids.
Right, the Weiland Foundation, certainly very worthy cause, and a lot of people in Orange County will be, and throughout Southern California, and indeed the world, attend this event every year, and that's great, Stuart. And you've attended many christenings and other cruise-related events with him, right?
Yes, several, including when he did Norwegian Bliss back in 2018.
Fantastic. Well, Stuart, full steam ahead to you and the cruise business. That is Stuart Chiron, president of CruiseGuide.com, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stuart, great to see you, and look forward to talking to you again very, very soon.
Thanks, Frank.
Epic week for the stock market, with the Dow ending the week at an all-time high, popping above 44,000 for the first time today, closing up 260 points at 43,999. The S&P 500 at a record high of 22 at 59.96 after moving above 6K for the first time, and the NASDAQ at a record high of 17 at 19,287. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 on Monday afternoon right here. Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
When you have sports mixed with your pop culture, along with humor and celebrity interviews, your earbuds are enjoying The Rich Eisen Show. The NFL's Dan Campbell, head coach of the Detroit Lions.
You got a good Parcells story, Dan Campbell?
Man, I got a million Parcells stories. I'm going to be a star. I'm going to go to Dallas and start. Bill tells me straight up, I'm just telling you right now, he goes, we really like you. Man, you fit here, but you're a backup. I was so heated. You know what? Yeah, I will come here and sign as a backup just to prove you wrong. It's like a mind trick.
Search for The Rich Eisen Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.